So, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
All right. Hopefully your face comes back. It says video is not there, but I'm sure I'll see you in a minute.
Oh, I just tested this with my mom last night. I think it's not fine.
That's okay. Totally okay. So, first of all, I really appreciate you setting up some time to chat. I think it's gonna do a lot of good for a lot of people to kind of hear a little bit about your story and some of the realizations you've made. And I've just been really blown away, honestly, with first of all, really just your spirit and your tenacity because, I've been doing this work for several years and I've found that when people, the energy that people bring into the process of wanting to change
Mm-hmm.
very often directly correlates with the amount of change that they actually get, right? If somebody's going after the idea of changing their issues half-heartedly,
Mm-hmm.
or if they have just kind of resigned themselves to, like, one thing I realize is that a lot of people will numb out their problem, right? Like
Right.
they've lived with it for so long, and it becomes so painful of a thing to even look at, and to really get honest with, and to say what is going to happen if I don't turn this around.
Mm-hmm.
That it becomes something where it's easier to distract, and
Mm-hmm.
some people go to drinking, some people go to drugs. If it's not that, it's, anything, right? Just something to get away, video games or TV or who knows, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sleeping, right? It's like, what can we do to just kind of get through the day? Um,
Right.
and I know that that's some of that language is even some of the stuff that you mentioned to me that you of kind of the place you were in when we first started working together. So I guess my first question for you, Brittany, would be, tell us, where were you at in life when you and I kind of started speaking, before we decided to work together, and tell us, everybody just kind of to get a sense of where were things, and what had you tried already?
Well, a litany of things. I mean, I've been in therapy since, well, actually, my first therapist was when I was 11, and I'm 28 now. And I've been through therapy from 11 to about, well, to this year. So I tried, what I think it was seven therapists, excuse me, 8 medications, 2 hospitalizations, partial and inpatient,
Mm-hmm.
and as well as as you just mentioned, as well as a litany of distractions. And I had basically resigned. I'll be quite frank. I've tried to commit suicide 3 times, and I couldn't go through with it. And I couldn't. I just decided to resign myself to the fact that the quote unquote fact that I was going to have a miserable life. And it
Right.
was just. I'd completely lost hope, and I just cried, rage, every day, and
Yeah.
I mean, it was awful.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. And it's a very lonely experience, depression is. I know too, because obviously from the people I work with, and, even from my own experience, you just feel like there's nobody that can understand.
Yeah.
It certainly is not something you're choosing, even though a lot of people would think that that's the case. And it's just not as easy as, like, let's just flip a switch, right? So I think
Right. That's
that's
what they often heard that, and I
right.
know a lot of other people hear that too. Why can't you flip a switch? And I think it's what you said. It's not that you can't. It's not as I mean, it's not as easy as that. We have to get access to the tools needed to flip that switch. It's not just I'm choosing not to utilize it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's kind of what this program served as for
Yeah.
me.
Good.
Is
Yeah.
getting access to that knowledge.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because, I think, and one of the big things I help people understand too is it's the big difference between, like, the conscious mind and the subconscious mind,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, consciously, it's like, well, yeah, okay, I do have things in my life I could feel grateful for. I do have a roof over my head. I do have this. I do have this. But why do I feel like this? Right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
why is this feeling still present? And what people don't realize is, you know, what's happening at the conscious level is about 5% of the equation, and what's happening at the subconscious level is about 95% of the equation. So,
I think
so I think one thing a lot of people have experienced too is I've worked with so many people with stories very similar to yours. Where depression and anxiety is like a big part of a daily experience. And I know that you even said too, you had taken yourself out of the workforce, right? Because
yes,
the anxiety was like too overwhelming in those stressful office related types of situations, right? So it's like you could things could go out of control really quick, and that's a very common experience for people. What made you decide to kind of take a leap and say, like, okay, like, maybe Ty's program is going to be different. Maybe I'm going to find something new here. Like, I know we did our consultation and I think I helped you look at things a little differently, but, was there any sort of moment where you kind of came to a decision point? Because I know that that's very often what holds people back is they say, well, I really should do this. I should do this. I should do this, but they never get themselves to jump. And it's like, once you actually take that little leap, there's such a world of growth and opportunity on the other side. But I'm just curious, like, was there like some sort of little insight you had or some little moment where you realized like, wow, I really need to do this?
there was a moment, and it did come from you. Actually, before we even had our consultation, it was after I posted that video on Facebook, and looking to get my needs met, of love and connection, and also significance. And you messaged me about possibly joining your program, and you had a very specific example that really touched me and really made me take the leap. And you said you can keep walking east, and you're not sure, you might not be sure where you're going to end up, or you could try walking west on a trail that's worked profoundly for other people. And I thought it was so simple. It made it so clear. And I thought, you're right. Everything I've been trying for for half my life has not worked.
Yeah.
So it's time to do something different.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do remember because you said, well, Ty, I mean, what the hell are you going to do that 7 years of therapy hasn't done? I think we did a lot that therapy didn't do. So that's good. Yeah. I mean, that's for the past decade of my life, really, I've just become obsessed with trying to figure out what I've realized is, if somebody's getting results in some area, it's not by accident, right? It's not, yes, okay, you can have a good break. You can, people can have a little stroke of luck here or there, but I really think that what ends up creating our destinies is what action do you take? And if you take the wrong action, you're not going to be rewarded for that. And so when you're applying an improper approach, you're just not going to get results. And it's a really horrible thing because so many people in the mental health space who are therapists and counselors have huge hearts. They just care so much. But unfortunately, the tools that most of them are using are just not very effective. And that's just what the reality is. And it's straight from the mouths of the people we work with every week. It's just an unfortunate reality. So maybe that would be a good next question is tell everyone, what was different about the process I showed you, right? What was different between how you had looked at your problem and how you had tried to deal with things before, and then what kind of shifted once we got you into the 60-day operation?
That it was integrative. It was results based, as I believe you've described, and it says on your website. It wasn't passive reflection. It wasn't, for lack of a better word, it wasn't coddling. It was being held accountable, but also in an encouraging and loving way. It wasn't. I didn't have any more room to be complicit in what I guess complicit in my victimhood. I want to say I don't mean to suggest that other people are like we said are chooses because
right.
They didn't have. I mean, they didn't. Most of them don't have the opportunities or to get into a program like this, and this has been such a blessing. It was. I find it really hard to articulate myself right now. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, no worries. Well, so let me
Yeah,
let me bounce this off you because I think you're total. I think that's a definitely like huge part of this. I'm so glad you bring that up, right? Like, because the problem too with people who've dealt with depression and anxiety for a long time, and this is a big problem, is if they go to their loved ones and their family, very often there's one of two reactions. There's either the reaction of, "What are you talking about? You're not depressed," and that's not helpful. And then
no.
the other reaction is, "Oh my gosh, you poor baby, I'm so sorry." And, of course, right? I mean, like, none of us would respond to somebody that we love who's in pain probably with anything but compassion, right? Like, it is so natural to respond that way. But one of the big insights I think you realized too was like that's part of why this becomes a sticky phenomenon, right? Is like if your subconscious is being kind of somewhat rewarded for staying in this pattern, even if you can't really put your finger on why, that becomes a part of it. So yeah, there is definitely an accountability aspect to it, and it was definitely fast paced. I think you probably got a sense of that too, right? I mean, I really just kind of threw you in.
I think you got a sense of my sense of it.
Right. A lot of people are like, I mean, even just by like the first video, sometimes people are like, "Oh my gosh, this is like overwhelming in a sense," right? Because it's like I want to dig down to the root, right? Like I want to go deep. I want to make sure we get to the bottom of it. So maybe that would be a helpful clarification too. Is like, what did you end up kind of figuring out was like the source of your problem, or what were a couple big, kind of aha moments that you really had that created shifts for you?
When I started to ask myself more resourceful questions, and I discovered that most of my problems, like most of my insecurities, most of my, a lot of memories and a lot of I'm sorry, a lot of things that were rooted in intrusive memories and flashbacks and recurring nightmares for me all came down to the meanings I was ascribing to certain
Right.
like schemas of the world, and once you start asking yourself questions and really, really, truly, looking at the truth of it,
Right.
and is this what I think? Is this
Right.
what has imposed on me to think? And it's like, okay, oh my gosh, and how ridiculous some of these beliefs are, or how just how wrong, and how you can always pull from examples of the opposite. It's not true that I'm always stupid. I graduated college, or something like that.
Right.
But that really helped with especially asking like the 4 key questions of
Yeah.
is it true?
Yeah.
Can we know it's true? Who
Right.
are you with this belief? Who are you without it? And so that was a huge. It still is a huge. That's honestly probably the biggest
Right.
proponent I've taken away from
Good.
this program.
Good. Yeah.
That I still use all the time.
Yeah.
I use plenty of things all the time. I don't want you to think I don't do it.
Oh no, I'm sure. Yeah, well, I mean, and that's honestly, I think there's a couple big things of what you just mentioned that come out to me that I think would really serve people to reflect on is like, and I would love to get your perspective on this too, but I think one of the big things I want to make sure I help people understand when they're looking at their issue is that yes, your depression and your anxiety is not a choice, but it is also not random. It's not something that just kind of like happens to you, or that you're like genetically enslaved to,
Right.
or that is always going to be with you. There is I use the words in the course, right, like a recipe. If you put in this component, and this component, boom, you're going to feel depressed day in and day out, right? If you're going about things in a particular way, if your mind has become habituated to interact with its environment through a particular strategy, then you're gonna end up feeling the way that you feel, right? And I think for people understanding that depression and anxiety are not lifetime sentences or permanent diseases, but instead they are sequential, like subconscious patterns, right? They're things that can be interrupted and shifted, right? And you started to learn, in that course, right? We show you like the 16 different like spots where we need to pay attention to, like, because I know if somebody's feeling depressed, it's probably 3 or 4 of these like 12 to 16 major things that are happening, right? Like, and I think that you started to, those are some of the tools you mentioned there. And then the other big thing too is, you know, you've got now a set of tools, right? That's what I want to make sure that people have too, is like, let's not just make sure that we get rid of this ugly depression and anxiety, but let's equip you with tools of emotional fitness so that like a year from now, when, you know, I think you mentioned to me like a moment at work before, right? Like where a credit card didn't go through and you like had a freak out.
That was the impetus for me to quit my job.
Right.
I'm like, I can't take it anymore.
Right.
I can't stop making mistakes. Everybody's critiquing me. I never get told anything. That's not true. That's not, see right there. I'm like, oh, I never get told anything positive. That's not true. You know, it's just because you have to catch those moments.
Yeah.
They're so quick and fleeting, and then you get the trading, and you're like, oh my gosh, you know.
Right.
Like, no, I'm not going back.
Yeah, but like you even just had like a just moment right there, right? Like the ability to catch your mind when it's going in that dark place and to now make that a less automatic experience. And you're still only like 8 weeks, you know, into this process. And that's another big thing I want to make sure we chat about too, is like where you are now and where you're headed. But you know, now, yeah, let's just dive into that. So tell us, you know, like what has shifted now for you in terms of how you feel. And because I think what you just pointed out is really important, right? Like, you know, before the mind would automatically go to this very dark place. And then there's kind of a phase where it's like you catch yourself when you're going to that dark place and you now know how to redirect. And then eventually you get to a spot where actually your brain is just redirecting. Like it's just going in the appropriate place more often than not. So what has kind of been your experience? Like how are you feeling now compared to when you started and you know, where are you going now?
Well, lighter. I mean, I feel like a whole different person. I can't thank you enough for the lessons you've imparted to me and to so many others. It's just, I mean, I have hope is the difference. You know, I don't look at the future with dread. I don't feel like I'm in prison. I feel like I came out of prison and doing this. And so, you know, I feel, and I'm not scared. I don't put off applying for jobs. I mean, I'm nervous, but it's good nerves. You know, it's right. You know, I'm more productive in my writing. I feel more confident. I don't, you know, care how other people think I look. It's just, you know, whatever. It's seriously, it's like a complete 180. I'm happy. I can't. And as a writer, I try not to use words that I don't feel consistently, and I almost never said, "Oh, I'm happy." I would say, "I'm okay. I'm fine." You know, I am happy.
That's great.
It's just, thank you so much. I can't even. I'll never stop singing praises.
Wow. That's Brittany. That's amazing. I'm just so happy for you. Isn't it amazing how elusive just the simple state of joy is for most people? And now you've figured out and found how to experience that on a daily basis. That's the greatest gift, you know. That's amazing. I want you to know too. I mean, I know.
For us and
what's that?
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Well, I said for us especially, are people who have suffered with depression and anxiety.
Yeah.
It's not just going to come. You know, you have to work for it and practice and commit to. Yeah. Commit to it. You know.
Yeah. You're totally.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's great. You know, I mean, because no one gives us a user's manual for the brain. You know, when we're growing up, no one helps us understand. You know, when I came out of my depression, I was like, I'll remember, you know, the moment that a big crack formed in my depression was I was suicidal. I had a plan to kill myself. The plan got interrupted. My family found out about everything, and you know, had this whole sit down with them, and you know, I was dreading this whole experience. Right, I'm like, my whole life is about to end, and then, you know, I was hospitalized, you know, because I would have made the same decision if I were in my parents' shoes. You know, they wanted to make sure I got help, and so I ended up going to this like juvenile place, and you know, you sit down and like I was 13 at the time, so like everyone is young. The oldest was like 16 or 17, and I remember sitting down And as soon as all the kids get there, like everybody's like, "So what are you here for?" You know, like everyone wants to like ask what everybody's story is, even though you're not supposed to. And I'll never forget
Right.
there was like the 16-year-old girl there, and she and I started talking, and that question came up, and I told her, well, you know, I'm not getting along with my parents. My parents are arguing a lot. I'm not feeling I feel really alone at school, you know, and I'm just kind of going down my list that I've said that list to myself like 1,000 times in my head, right? And
Right.
then and I'll never forget, but like she was smiling from ear to ear. And I was like, "Why are you here? Like you've got so much joy about you. Like why are you here?" And she tells me about this how her stepfather has been like sexually and physically abusive, and she's got bruises visibly on her arms, like all over her arms. And I will never forget that. I mean, I've never been a particularly religious person, but I feel like that was like a moment of grace or something where the universe was just trying to smack me upside the head, because all of a sudden I realized, like, wait a minute, you know, like, it put all of the things I thought meant that my life was over in perspective, deeply.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, everything I was dealing with was put in the appropriate frame. And from that moment on, that was, I think, the very first moment where I stopped identifying as somebody that was depressed and instead started identifying as somebody that was recovering from depression. And, you know, that was when everything kind of shifted. And it's crazy how our mind, you know, you can get stuck. I call it the black box, right? Like you get stuck in the black box of your mind, and you can't, there's no way to kind of figure out what's going on in here unless you have a trained eye for it, you know. And that's what I've dedicated my life to now, is understanding how do we get ourselves in these dark corners and how do we get ourselves out. So all of the change that has happened, Brittany, I know you're thanking me, but honestly, I mean, I think it's so important for people to understand that you've been the driver of your change. You know, you really have. I mean, I'm happy to be a guide and to point you in the right direction and to give you a strategy, you know, that'll make sure you get quick results. But without the application, without the determination, without the resolve to actually apply it, you know, there's nothing, right? And you know that. So you deserve all the credit for everything you're doing. What's the next chapter going to look like for you now that this fog is lifting day by day? You know, what's happening for you now?
Well, I'm going to not only, I mean, re-enter the workforce, of course. So, did that just rhyme? So, yes, re-enter the workforce, but I'm going to work full time. I've never had a full time job before, and I'm confident that I'll be able to secure that. I'm going to, you know, commit to finishing my manuscript. I'm on draft 3. It's about time
That's great.
to finish that. And as far as, I mean, sky's the limit. Honestly, is how I feel on what I want to do. If I want to date, I feel like I can do that now. When I save money, I can move out of my mom's house. It's all open. There's so much possibility because you see it. You know, you're blind for it, stumbling in the dark, and you offer a candle. And if we follow you to that candle and take it from you and go down the rest of the path, I mean, it just,
yeah.
You know, I don't mean to get like, you know, I don't even know what I'm saying. But it's so much brighter. It's so much brighter. There's so much opportunity. Is my point being.
Oh gosh, I'm so happy for you, Brittany. I'm so, you know,
I don't mean to be giddy, but
no, that's great. Giddy's great. You know, I think a lot of people have given up on Giddy. I don't think they think it's a possibility for them anymore. And, you know, or they think like, okay, well, you know, okay, Ty, what are you going to teach me? How to just positive think? You know, how to just put a smile on? It's like, no, we have to go about 4 layers deeper than that, you know, but, yeah, I'm just so, you know, you say that you feel like a different person. I honestly, I'm talking to a different person right now. Like,
do you think so?
Absolutely. I mean, the woman I'm speaking to now compared to 2.5 months ago, you know, when I first reached out to you and had a phone call with you, now you can't finish a sentence without laughing. Before it was you couldn't finish a sentence without crying. I'm pretty sure. You know, I mean, it's just you've taken the pain out and replaced it with joy, and it's just a blessing to have worked with you, Brittany. I'm so excited to continue to see where life goes for you. I know whichever partner you end up deciding on, you know, is going to be very blessed to be surrounded by your energy. I can't wait to read your can't wait to read that book. The world is waiting for your gift to be
Well, I hope you'll get
expressed.
to see it one day. I really, really do. And if I got anything to say about it, which I do,
Right.
then you will.
That's great. It's great. I hope for a signed copy. That'd be awesome. Good.
Thank you so much, Tom. I mean, just
Of course,
and
Brittany.
the one last thing I wanted to say is how much I appreciate the fact that the work we've done together, how much it worked on other things I didn't plan on resolving.
Oh, like what?
I always had this. Well, because I have been a religious person. I'm a Christian, and you always talk about forgiveness, and I always thought when it came to my emotionally abusive father, I don't want to forgive him. He doesn't deserve it, and I don't know how I can even begin to start. And through this program, I found out when tackling the submodalities and learning how to kind of reverse engineer into recurring nightmares and flashbacks, and they just started lessening in impact, and they have no impact now. I don't even think about him.
Oh my
and
God.
I never thought that was.
That's amazing.
I never thought that was possible, and I mean that's the biggest long time impact I'm going to take away from this, and I truly, deeply thank you for that.
That's
thank
amazing.
you so much.
That's so
it's
amazing.
taught me the value of forgiveness and how to forgive without forcing it.
Yeah.
And
You were very haunted by that. I remember. That was a deeply. Yeah, that's
I mean,
amazing.
sometimes you couldn't even look at people on the street without. I couldn't even.
I think that's so important too, because so many people too. I think a lot of people struggle too, because they think like, okay, well, depression and anxiety, that's in one category, but I mean, I had trauma, right? Like I think a lot of times people like separate that a little bit, and they think that the trauma that they underwent is going to haunt them forever, or that
Right.
it's so deeply embedded that it's never going to be able to be something that we can condition. And I'm just so grateful that that's turned around for you, because I know it's possible for anyone as well.
It is.
Last question I would have for you, Brittany, is what would you say to somebody out there? Like, what would you say to somebody, probably honestly, like somebody who you were just a couple months ago, somebody that's been down and out for a long time, somebody that's tried this, they've tried that, they've tried this, everything's fallen apart, they're not feeling like themselves, they've given up on the idea of actually turning things around, and they're not really sure about whether to take action or not. What would you say to somebody like that?
I would say that they are their biggest long-term investment, and they need to love themselves enough to find the resource that they believe is going to work best for them and commit to it, and to dig deep and to practice it and integrate it and treat it like it's their life's dependent on it, because in a lot of cases it is, and it's worth living. It really can be worth living. It really is worth living.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you're glad that you took a chance on yourself a couple months ago.
And thank you so much for reaching. I seriously can never thank you enough.
You know what is amazing too, Brittany, is when we first spoke, I knew this moment was going to be here.
Really?
But I knew you didn't believe that this moment was going to be here.
Yeah, that's very true.
And I think I even said to you something along those lines of like, just wait, like a couple months from now, we're going to be talking again, and you're going to be feeling like this and this. And I've seen these miracles happen so many times. It's not even a miracle. I mean, there's a process. It's just, that's what it is. It's like,
it's a miracle to me.
you're right. Yeah.
It's
Well,
a marriage of miracle and scientific process.
yes. Well, hopefully you will, I know you're going to be a miracle in the lives of countless individuals. Hopefully some people even watching this video, they'll be inspired by your story, and who will share some of your courage and borrow some of it and take some action to move their own life forward. So I thank you. I'm just so blessed to have known you and worked with you, Brittany, and I'm just so excited for the next chapter of your life to unfold. And thank you so much for turning your story of pain into your source of power, and just sharing that with the world. I'm so grateful for that.
Well, thank you. I feel the same way about you. Thank you for the same things. It's just please, you know, oh, I know you won't stop. I'm gonna say this is kind of your business. I say, please don't ever stop.